Yes, you're watching the South Australian Sports Show. Now Poppy pre-season training has started for a lot of clubs. Lots of injuries occur. But you were religious because you were so well prepared before pre-season, wouldn't you?
No, not really. You know what, pre-season was okay because I didn't mind running so much. But I think it's just the thought of starting pre-season because you never used to get the balls out for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I used to like to run it.
All right, occasionally you get injured in pre-season, of course, as the game's starting to get injured. We have brought in one of the best from South Australia. Dr. Mark Rafe joins us. Doc, how are you?
Good, Phil.
Best on-ground performance. That's where you can get in touch with the Doc if you need to see him about a wide range of things. He's covered everything, AFL, SANFL, basketball, netball, you name it. He's been across all the sports. Now,
thanks, Phil.
Doc, pre-season training, it's warmer now. Dehydration, has that become a problem?
Well, it is, and heat stress, particularly in South Australia. What's unusual about South Australia compared to a lot of other states is we have these sudden spikes of temperature. So if you're talking to the Queensland teams and Queensland doctors, they say, oh, heat stress isn't much of an issue because, you know, there's not many hospitalisations, we put up with it. But we have the situation where you might have, you know, 25 to 30, then all of a sudden get on those 40-degree days. We just don't have time to acclimatise. So heat stress and dehydration are real issues in South Australia. And remember that, you may not know, but dehydration and heat stress are two different issues. Okay. So you can be well hydrated and still get heat stroke.
Do coaches play a part in manoeuvring training around those different conditions? Because you'd expect you'd map out your training. And whether you alter that to suit the temperature, I'm not sure that they do. Oh, this is what I need them to do. I can't change it. Is that a problem?
It is. I've had arguments on the phone with SANFL coaches when I've been looking after teams, and they said, "Well, but the AFL training like this, we're borrowing their, patterns of training." I said, "Well, they're training at 7 in the morning. It's supposed to be 38 degrees today with a high humidity. You've got all these guys and tradies who have spent all day at work, sort of sweating over, doing whatever they do, and then you're going to run them doing sort of multiple hundreds and those sorts of things. So you do have to be mindful of the conditions."
Is there a fine line between listening to the doctor and then the coaches just go, "Yeah, thanks, Doc," and then go off and do their own thing? And you feel like saying to them, "I'm not telling you how to kick the footy or shoot the basketball. I'm just saying this is not right for you." What do you do when they just go, "Thanks," and then go and do their own thing anyway?
Well, it does bring up the issue that us doctors are more about health and the coaches are more about performance, and we get that. And I think traditionally us sports doctors have been more about health and performance, but it's a two-way discussion. And so if you say, well, what are you training for? What's the next big thing coming up? And let's try and compromise about what I think's the best, and you want to maximise the chance of best performance. I think keeping up that communication is the best, but I've certainly worked for under coaches who have labelled guys as weak and soft, and they've been yelling at them, so I can hear them in the doctor's room, which is a bit done by the coach, I think, to say if you see the doctor or the physio or the massage person, you're dumb, you're weak, you're soft, don't go in there. And so you do see a range of guys, however, that have very minor complaints, and they're like a chat maybe. And then you see guys, or you don't see guys for a whole season. You know that they really need to be seen, but they just sort of carry on regardless. But I think if you carry the communication, it's okay.
What about there's obviously a lot more focus on female sport at the moment, especially if we're talking about, say, AFL football, for instance. What do you perceive as some of the problems that they may confront because I guess it's a bit of a learning curve for them to prepare for a game of AFL football? Yeah,
well, the thing that struck me, just looking at the very basic numbers about women playing high-level sport, is the rates of ACLs, the cruciate ligament ruptures. They're about up to 8 times higher in females.
And 8 times higher in female than men?
Than men, and
that's incredible.
Concussion is up to 4 times more common.
Wow.
So in an AFL team, on average, I think you're expected to get 1.2 or 1.3 concussions per team per year.
Yes.
So you can expect that to quadruple or even be higher in AFL.
Why is that?
$1 million question. If you know, let me know.
Wow.
We'll publish it together. But one thing that strikes me about that is that there's certainly lower body mass. So maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't think anyone really knows. It's not anything about weakness of the players, but it certainly shows that women go in just as hard, just as ferociously at the ball.
Sure.
But they've got to have, when you examine these SANFL guys or AFL guys, they have airbags. They have, lats on them that are 2 inches thick. They've got deltoids out to here. So you can see why they can hit the ground and bounce up again, or have a collision and get up again.
Okay.
A lot of the women, when Jenny was coaching West Adelaide Women's Football Club at the start of this year, a lot of the women were smaller, certainly didn't have the muscle mass around them that an equivalent guy player would have had. So I think there's going to be a lot of, there's going to be months and years of data collection to try and answer those questions.
Doc, the other thing is, we see it in the cricket, obviously, because the cricket's been going. Now it's coming into the AFL. Suspect netball's going to get there eventually. When is Medicare and those going to say, well, look, we don't think we need to cover off on that anymore? Is that?
Well, that's a real big issue. Medicare have said last year that they wouldn't cover professional sports players' injuries costs, expecting that the Sports Institute or the association, like if one of the Australian cricket players did their shoulder and needed a reconstruction, Medicare we're going to change the legislation to say, and it actually is in legislation, they're just going to enforce it, that Medicare wouldn't be responsible for the costs, that the Cricket Australia would pay for the costs. Now, the spirit of that is if you're a full-time professional athlete and you're being well paid by an institution that's got lots of money, that seems easy. But it's a slippery slope, because then what happens when you get down to a Thunderbird netballer or Australian level netballer earning $30,000 a year? You get the AFL women, the lowest ones are those earning $8,000 a year for up to 6 months of training and playing. So the spirit of it is, look, Cricket Australia, whoever's got to pay for it. But if Medicare start enforcing that, the other issue is that work covers never agreed that a sports ground's a work cover environment.
Yes.
Okay.
So what happens now? You've got no Medicare, you've got no work cover. Then all of a sudden you've got an athlete with an ACL that, if you wait in a public system, what's your bet for a public system waiting list at the moment for
12 months?
12 to 18 months. So you potentially got a woman who's
over.
a firefighter. There's a lot of police women playing, and they've got to sort of stomp around on a league that's giving away for up to a year, while everyone's arguing about who's going to pay the bills.
And at the same time their career's over. So by the time they rehab, they've been out of the game 2 or 3 years. We see it a lot on the weekend sports, the weekend doctors, out watching the kids play, and someone rolls their ankle, and suddenly there's 20 people around giving advice on what to do. What's the right advice? Please don't go to Google.
Well, it's interesting you say Dr. Google. Dr. Google's right about 30% of the time, but when they do studies on if you put your symptoms in, but saying that, Dr. Google's she's wrong about 70% of the time. So don't. But at least I like Google from the point of view. At least you come with a list of questions for the docs. But for like any injury, it's the RISA stuff. It's the rest, ice, compression, elevate. So at least put it up. I know I was watching a Sacred Heart game, and Graham Corns was watching, and one of the Crows players, who was going to be a Crows player, sort of did his ankle, and I came over because I was an SANFL doctor at the time and wanted to be helpful, and Cornsey said, get away, because there was 20 people trying to be helpful as well. But as a doctor, I've got to take the shoe off to actually examine it to see what's wrong. Do they need to go to the emergency department or whatever? Generally speaking, if they can't fully weight bear on it, then they need an X-ray. So I think leave the shoe on. If they can't walk, get them off to the emergency department. Otherwise, keep it up, wrap some ice up on it, and ring up Best on Ground Performance, and we will
That's good
sort them
advice.
out.
The worst thing you could ask for is a carpenter to be the first person there when someone's done their ankle.
What's wrong with orthopaedic surgeons?
Well, that's right. You do need a doctor.
Oh, Don, we could chat for ages. There's plenty of things to talk about. We need to get to a break. Your wife, not too far away to join us. Go and see Mark Rafe, Best on Ground Performance, if you've got any queries about your health or injuries. Stay with us. Back in a moment.